Well, I really think there was a top to bottom desire to do it. It wasn't just, the CEO's plan. Everybody was bought into it. So changing a culture, that's what it requires. It requires everybody to really catch the vision.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Joel, how are you?
Hey, Randy, I am doing good. I'm excited to be talking with you today, man.
Hey, well, thanks for inviting me onto the show. This is quite an honor for me. Thank you.
Are you in Colorado right now?
Yes, sir, I am.
Tell me about the weather.
Well, we had a bit of a cold snap earlier in this week, and we were down in single digits for a couple days, but the sun's out and it's back up in the 50s, I think, today, and the weekend looks great. So typical Colorado weather.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, my wife and I were looking to move out to like the Texas area. We actually designed our search based off of multiple different weather maps of weather patterns and humidity. And we saw this nice area. Of course, weather doesn't care about the state lines that we draw, right?
Right.
We saw this nice area around Texas, southern Utah, Colorado area where it was like the weather that we want, because we're here in Florida. It's about 92 degrees and it's been that way for about 12 months. It feels like.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It's great. Here we have about 300 days of sunshine. So that's something I really like. And I think, my company's based out of Washington. So that's a big difference, leaving here 300 days of sunshine, going there, almost the opposite, but beautiful out there, just a different type of beautiful, I guess.
Yeah, every place has its own thing. For me, I like the sunshine because I'm from the Sunshine State. I just want the less humidity and a little bit cooler. Like I want some seasons, right? Especially as it wasn't as big of a deal with me, but now that I have kids, it's harder to travel with little ones. And so rather than traveling to go get the weather, it's like maybe we relocate our home base to go get the weather. But yeah, this isn't a meteorology podcast though.
Right. Yeah, well, good luck with that. That's exciting.
Thanks. I'll let you know where we end up. I actually spend a lot of time out in like the Boulder area, and I know you're a little bit south of that.
Yeah.
But I was geeking out though with the production team before the show, because we saw that, earlier on in your career, you got to work on some of the old space shuttle navigation systems and things like that. Could you tell me a little bit about what you were working on?
Yeah, sure. So this was back in really an exciting time for the space program. This was after the shuttle disaster, and it was return to flight. So there was a huge push back in the late 80s to bring on new engineers to gear up for the return to flight. So me and 200 and some of my closest new college grads got hired on by Rockwell Space Operations to, really fill out what they needed in terms of the resources to make that happen. So we got on just about a year before we actually launched STS-26, I believe. And it was just the most fun time ever. We had just a really young group of engineers, most of us right out of college. Now, we did have a lot of senior folks that came over from the previous maintenance contract for the shuttle. So they were our mentors, and they were super cool people. And it was just an amazing group. And after launches, the astronauts would come to Johnson Space Center, and there'd be this big party, and we could go meet them and talk to them. And so that was fantastic. And so I worked in the intact abort group. So if something goes wrong, we can return back to the Cape, or we can go across the ocean somewhere in Europe or Africa. So that was really cool. And Steve Nagel was one of the champions of the shuttle abort. After the disaster, he was one of the leaders in trying to come up with better, safer mechanisms for the crew safety. So he was kind of our hero, and we got to talk to him pretty frequently. So that was super exciting time.
And then did that prepare you at all for transitioning into software? Was it a natural transition, or how did that go?
You bet. So everything we do, or we did back in the day, we did on mainframes, but it was all software. So running simulations on shuttle missions and preparing we call them initialization loads. So the shuttle flies itself essentially, but it uses a big set of parameters to do that. And so we would, before the launch, we would spend about a year and go through, I don't know how many, hundreds and hundreds of simulations. And our task was just to prepare the launch software so that it knew where these abort boundaries were and when it was safe to return to the launch site and when they needed to press across the ocean. So it was just working on computers, and it was mainframe, so it was a little different. We programmed in Fortran, was our simulation language, but it really got me I guess geeking on the whole concept of what you could do with software. And at one point, we brought on a data visualization package, and you can imagine back in the late 80s, this was pretty rudimentary. But for the first time, we took some of the output from the simulation and fed it into a 3D model of the shuttle, and we could actually see in 3D what was going on when an engine would fail. And nobody'd seen that. We just see the plots and the charts and stuff like that. So that really got me excited about going, in a little different direction than the space program. And so I just started canvassing Colorado with my resume, trying to get a job in software development.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's such a like large advancements. And because when you were first describing it, my mind automatically was just picturing the 3D illustrations. And then you went on to describe that. Oh, and then at some point we got this new illustrative package, right? It's like, oh, that's right. And then I was thinking, what on earth were they looking at before? They were looking at 3D model, and you said graphs. And I said, whoa, you guys doing all of that work, and the visual interaction you get with it is just some plot data.
Oh yeah. Roll, pitch, and yaw, and just trying to make sense of what that looks like. Translate that into some type of reality. So yeah, seeing that for the first time was a kick.
And then was there a number of different software projects you worked on until you got to ImageSource? How did you end up at ImageSource?
Yeah, I did. So I ended up moving to Colorado with GT Government Systems, working on an artificial intelligence program written in Ada. So it was a very interesting piece of software, and I didn't spend a lot of time there because that was part of internal research and development that we did, and that contract went away, and so I moved only a year or so after joining that team. But very interesting early AI. And so then I went to a number of different places. I worked at MCI on their video conferencing system. This was back in the day where you used multiple phone lines to do video conferencing, and then muxing and unmuxing the signals and whatnot. And then from there, I went to a small company that did content management. We were acquired. That company was acquired. I ended up at Oracle for a while, and then I've been here at ImageSource for the last 7+ years. So
nice.
Pretty exciting. Yeah, it's been a great ride.
What's the story of you meeting the executive team at ImageSource?
Yeah, so back when we were at a company called Optika, they were a company here out of Colorado Springs, a small company. We had about 150 people. Great company. We had some really good software, and back in the mid '90s, we were kind of leading edge for the Windows platform. So I think we really had some good stuff. And we had a number of resellers that sold our products. And so ImageSource was one of those companies that resold and implement and deployed, basically a systems integrator for our software. And so we got to know them. They ended up becoming our best partner. They sold the most. They were great to work with. And so our product progressed, and then we got bought by Oracle, and we retooled everything. So we had been a Microsoft-based shop, and Oracle's all, Java. And so we retooled our product, and it really just didn't fit with our traditional customer base. And so ImageSource decided to go a little different way and build their own stuff. Again, a Microsoft-based product, a little more suited for the SMB space. And so they got it a certain ways down the road. Things were coming together, looking good, and they thought, we probably need to bring somebody on to help us make that transition from a systems integrator into a real software ISV. And that's a tough transition, right? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So trying to pivot like that, it's hard. So I came on, I helped them with that, and we've been very successful in transforming. We're now, 99.9% just our stuff. So that's been a just a really fun transition for us.
Looking back on it, why were you successful at that transition?
Well, I really think there was a top to bottom desire to do it. It wasn't just, the CEO's plan. Everybody was bought into it. So changing a culture, that's what it requires. It requires everybody to really catch the vision for where you want to go, and have people that can communicate that vision effectively and really rally the team. And our CEO is great, Terry Sutherland. He really did a great job doing that. And when I got on board, I really didn't have to fight it. It was more about just education and, hey, based on my experience, this works out pretty well if we change this process to work this way. So yeah, it was just a real good team effort to do it. And we didn't have any dissension, well, we've always done it this way, we're not going to change. So it went pretty smooth, actually.
And so after the transition, what's the main problem you solve? What's the product or service behind that solution?
Right. So we have an enterprise content management platform. So we help companies evaluate what they do from a business process perspective, and it could be anything. And we do a lot of state and local government, so permit processing or gun permit processing, to healthcare, to financial services, to high-tech manufacturing, to higher ed. But we work with companies to help them evaluate their current processes and figure out ways to basically transform those into a digital type of process. So it's taking paper and turning that into digital assets, taking their workflow that had been physical, carrying things around or interoffice mail, and turning those into electronic processes, and then applying layers of automation on top of that, intelligent routing for exception handling. We have analytics, so you want to keep track of what's going on, identify bottlenecks, measure how successful you're being. So we provide that kind of a platform. And then our services folks, they've got 26 years of experience helping customers make that transition from the paper and physical world into a more digital type of business processes.
So when your customers come in, or when you approach the market, is it more of like a digital transformation consultant, or somebody, they're seeing the RPA type tool and they're like, I want that tool? How do you go to market with having such a wide array of services?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's a challenge, because you're selling almost a toolkit. And that's really hard to get a prospective customer to catch that vision. And how do you paint a complete enough picture of what you could do for them to solve their pain? Because like I say, nobody wants a 1/4-inch drill; they want a 1/4-inch hole. And so
I've not heard that.
Yeah, so it's so true. Nobody wants a toolkit. They just want you to solve their business pain. And so, like I said, we've got some folks, because of the history, integrating many different types of software. They didn't just sell my software. They sold Oracle, they sold IBM, they sold Kofax and some of the other products, Liquid Office. So they had a really broad perspective on what was available technology-wise to solve customers' problems. And so they would walk in, we have what's called an ecosystem. You'd be surprised how many customers don't really understand how they do business. And so we help them understand that, and then we look for ways that we can improve upon that. And our services guys at this point, they're experts with our platform, and so they really can make that transition for them to say, we see you doing this, we can make it look like this.
I like that. So is digital transformation like a foot in the door these days?
It is, especially, we're all kind of sick of talking about COVID, but we've been doing this type of digital transformation for 20 some years. And so we were really pretty well positioned when this hit to help customers adapt and change their workforce from in person and big offices to now working from home in a safe environment for their data.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned the COVID thing, because we get people pitch us all the time, to come on the podcast. We get the infinite email box of pitches. And it seems like for the past 6 months straight, every pitch is like, COVID's done this. And I was like, when I saw your PR team they actually sent over some pretty interesting topics of conversation. So I shout out to them, but other pitch people. And one of the things I was talking about with the team, I was saying like, I don't want COVID like on the topic list anymore, because I'm so sick of hearing about it. Right?
I know. Yeah.
Like, think about it, Randy, when you turn on your media, like it's just like, it's burnt out. I'm like burnt out on COVID. Yeah,
it is. It is, personally and professionally, right? It's pervasive every day. You're just something about COVID, but that's the reality. And it was a huge impact to businesses. And so, yeah. And who knows what this is going to look like 6 months, 12 months from now.
I know. So my favorite ones. How do you continue to innovate through COVID?
Right.
I said we should rewrite it and just start replacing COVID with like the 2020 flu season.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the answer to that, right, is necessity is the mother of invention. So I think there's been a lot of cool innovation because of COVID.
There really has. Like, to their credit, there is a lot of interesting things that have happened because, everything from the school industry overnight having to go digital, which I saw a LinkedIn post of this CTO at a major college. I can't remember what it was right now, but he did this long blog post about 2 months after COVID about how he literally worked with the entire engineering team at the college to transition, like, I think it was 10 or 20,000 students within a couple of weeks from them going to in-person classes to them being 100% online. And I put it on the list for like later next year. I was like, I want to talk to that guy about what actually went down on the battlefield, like going through that process.
Right. Oh my gosh, how much stress that would be trying to do that. It just has to be done. There's just no way to continue to function, and such an important, part of our society. So.
And with people digitizing their workflows or looking at, being more strict on cost and also having to work remote, did that like uptick your business a little bit? Did it increase it, or?
It did. So our existing customers, they were already pretty well positioned in terms of just the technology itself. But we did see, to your point about the school system, a number of our customers having to react very quickly now to huge increases in what they had to do. So government agencies that we work with that now had to facilitate, workers' comp and, help with businesses, financial help and unemployment. And so we service a lot of those types of customers in the Pacific Northwest, especially. And they were scrambling. So not really just from a technical perspective, but just how do we handle this increased volume? So that was great. Our services guys are well positioned to help them, and so we were able to make some changes for them and scale them out very quickly. But yeah, we have seen a lot more interest in technologies that will facilitate these remote workforces, and very interesting. So as COVID unfolded, we were surprised, I guess, as many companies were. How much about their business they really didn't understand, and so that was good and bad. But one of the things that was particularly interesting to us is that I mentioned we have a very broad set of customers. Some of them have HIPAA compliance. That they have to meet, the PII, PCI, ITAR. So a lot of different regulations around the data and the data they process. And so in 2019, their employees came in, they had a very comfortable, safe environment. They didn't have randos walking behind them or people, looking through windows or whatever. Well, now they send all these people home. And how do you still enable your remote workforce with everything they need, but keep control and keep your data safe or keep other people's data safe? So we have some great technologies for data loss prevention, and so that was was a big topic with our existing customers and new customers.
So you've got these different, I guess, for lack of a better term, either products or business units type deal where you have the document imaging, some data privacy, some RPA. So you as, the technology leader over there, how are the teams like structured? How do you structure that organization? Is it by product? Do you have cross product teams with certain layers abstracted? I know it's like the design of the teams is dictated by the business model almost, but I'm just curious what yours looks like.
Right. Well, so we have a core team, we call them, and they're responsible for the primary platform. And we really want to move to microservices, functions as service, things like that. That's ultimately where we want to go. We're not there yet. So our core is a bit monolithic, but then we have other teams that build on top of that. So whether they're building like a full end user product or they're building a module that augments our workflow, we have different teams that will pick up those modules, and then they just add into our suite of tools that you can choose from to do whatever you need for your business.
Nice. And do you get to interact like in the sales process or with some existing like customers of yours? Like how much time do you get to spend, with your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of that is one of the parts of my job I enjoy the most, is working directly with our customers. And of course, that's been really a bummer for 2020, right? Is we don't get that face time. And I think a lot of our customers are scrambling. So even getting them on a Zoom conference and stuff like that is probably a little more challenging than it would normally be. But yeah, we spend a lot of time talking to our customers, and that's one of the other things that drew me to the small company environment, is that we can go out and talk to a customer. We can come up with some great ideas to solve some new problems for them. And we can come back, and in a couple of months, we can release a new module that bolts right onto our platform, and that becomes part of our product going forward. So we're very nimble. And that is exciting when you can talk to a customer, hear some pain, and then you come back to them a couple of months later and say, we've got something to solve that pain for you.
I like it, right? And you get to know them and you get to understand them. What's some of the trends? What's like the biggest trend you're seeing right now across the customers?
Well, aside from just the scrambling, right, the very tactical, how do we, maintain business continuity through these weird situations? We're seeing a lot of needs for analytics and understanding what's going on in my business, and that's not really something new, but I think it's maybe it's COVID again, but it's trying to understand what this means now that I've sent all my people home. And you hear a lot in the news about, this is going to be permanent for us because we just saw big spikes in productivity. Maybe that's true. It's a soft metric. And so I'd be very interested to understand more about how they're measuring that. Maybe you've got some perspectives because you talk to some really sharp people, but that's just really hard for me to get my head around. I'm kind of a more in-person person. So I like being in the office. I like the collaboration of being with my team and talking things over and sitting on the whiteboard or talking with customers on the whiteboard. So analytics has been kind of an uptick for us. And then the process of customer engagement and even employee engagement, now not physical, now out, electronic. So we have a web form product. And so being able to collect information from new customers, employees, whatnot, through web interfaces, through mobile devices and things like that, better than throwing a PDF form or something like that up on your website. So those are probably the two biggest areas that we're seeing. That and to your earlier point, managed services, helping customers scale their system, manage their system, take the burden off of just the mundane managing the care and feeding of my line of business systems.
Yeah, and I have a question that we can cut it if we don't like it, but I'm just curious to know because it just popped into my head. So I'm curious at your level of business, can you give me a quick idea of the employee count at ImageSource?
Yeah, we're around 100 employees.
Okay, so I'm just curious at that stage, which there are going to be more companies than not at that stage, right? Because that's how the market works. When you're involved in the pre-sales process with a customer, right? I'm sure you're coming in there for like expert advice. Is it like, how does that work from a sales perspective? Do you close them like a sales close, or are you working with another sales executive and you provide information and they close? Do you get involved in the finance of the deal? I'm just curious from a business perspective at your level.
Yeah, well, great question. It's more the latter. So we have sales executives. They would curate and cultivate the prospect until we get to a point where it makes sense to get in front of them and show them some real technology. And so I do get involved when they're especially when they're complicated, or maybe they've got some touch points with Salesforce or ERP systems or whatever. And so we'll configure a system up, and ours is a platform, many toolkit type of functionality. So we'll build out something that will resonate with them. We don't want to have to force them through that mental exercise of leaping from that toolkit to how you're going to solve my pain. So we want to show them as much as we can. And so I typically will do that. I often do demos, and then I'll very often meet with the IT group. A lot of times the business, always the IT group, they have questions about security and scalability and compliance and things like that. So yeah, but I don't get involved in the any pricing, licensing, negotiations, closing, paperwork, things like that, which is nice.
Do you think that the experience of being at this level in business has made you a better customer when purchasing?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So when we go into competitive situations, and me, I've worked at about 8 different companies. One of the things that and this, sometimes our salespeople don't really like this, but I like to show the customer, the prospect, the tools that they would be using and really how easy it is to build what I'm showing them. You take a lot of the other products and they'll come in, they'll have some very, very slick demos and nice glossies. But if you ask them, can you show me what it took to put together this demo? That's problematic, and a lot of their salespeople can't do it. And if they have a good SE that can come in and help them, it's very, very complicated. So having been on the selling side, when I go to buy something, I'm not satisfied if you're going to show me your standard marketing demo. I want you to open the bonnet, show me what's under the hood, show me how you're going to configure these things. If there's some extensibility capabilities you've got built in, I want to see what those look like. So yeah, that's really that's changed my perspective when I go to buy things.
Yeah, I recently we bought a new system, and when my team, they wanted to buy it, right? So I said, okay, let's discuss the metrics that are important to the business and how this will help us achieve our goals. They had all of that covered. And then the price, we could do the price. And then there were like 4 or 5 technical things that would make or break the deal, right? And so we went into a sales meeting, and then the salesperson just started like pitching, because they have to be prepared and take, the control, because I bet most people don't know. They just sit there and watch the presentation, right? And I was just like, I apologize. I don't mean to like interrupt you, but I have these 4 very specific questions. And then they tried to open up the demo version, and it like, they weren't as familiar with the demo version as they were with their own account. So they ended up exiting the demo version, going into their own account and actually answering my questions. It was a 30-minute call, and they closed a big deal, and it was really great for them. Right. But before my background is I built software, like large scale software systems. And so I'd get like one customer and I'd work with them for a year, 1 to 3 years. And so while I would call myself an entrepreneur then, I didn't ever run a sales team, like a B2B sales team. So I had no experience in that until the past 2 or 3 years here. And so now that I've gotten to see how a sales team operates and how everything works, I feel like that's made me a much better customer than I was before. And it gives me sort of like the leeway to know that I'm not being rude, that I'm actually helping us all get to the point we want to get to quicker. And I think that more often than not, less experienced people, which are listening to the show to get more experience, they will be polite and sit there for the half hour with the 3 questions they have, watch the person like not answer anything or hope the whole demo. And then at the end, they're like out of time and they want to get their 3 questions answered. So I kind of want to like public service announcement that. Right?
Absolutely. That is a great point. Yeah, you should never be embarrassed in a demo to ask questions. And like they always say, there's no stupid question, right? You don't know the software. You don't know what's going on under the hood. So it makes perfect sense to ask those questions. If they can't answer it, then maybe that's fine. They have to go pull in a technical resource. That shouldn't be necessarily a red flag, but whatever answer they come back with, you should be a pretty good one.
I love it. And I also heard, so I had this great VP of sales, Jaime, and one of the meetings I was in with him, the meeting was kind of over at 12 minutes into a half-hour meeting, right? Because we got the questions answered, but there was this weird tension in the room that the meeting should continue for the half hour it's scheduled, right? That law of the task will take the amount of time allotted. Yeah. And I think it was a Drucker thing, but he exited with this beautiful line, okay, we have all of our questions answered. There's 16 minutes left back in your hour or, in your half hour. Enjoy that. And we'll talk soon. And I was like, whoa, just watching him, how he exited it, the call, and did that so cleanly was, I don't know. I learned more by just watching people, right? Do something. Cause then I can monkey see, monkey do it,
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's, any craft where you've got a real artisan, a salesperson, a technologist, or whatever. Yeah, you can learn so much just watching people. It's awesome.
I love it. Yeah. Watching your team, watching your kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is. Yeah,
absolutely.
So, you earlier were alluding to a little bit of privacy and security. It looks like you do some stuff over there. And I was just curious if you have any tips for people that have, made the transition to the work from home on dealing with their security.
Yeah, that's a big question. And it spans whatever, network security, access to your line of business systems from over a VPN, things like that, to what are your employees looking at on the screen, and who's walking behind them through the kitchen or the home office or whatever. So I think there are some pretty cheap things. You can get those little privacy screens on your laptops and things like that. But and again, it depends on the level of regulations that you're under. HIPAA's pretty serious stuff, and they've got a lot of things you can and can't do, and so you got to take that very, very serious. And make decisions about, do I need a technology that's going to help me protect this information? Other information, if you're processing customer complaints or something like that, you're probably fine. So it really comes down, I think, to the type of information that you're processing, or that your remote workers are processing at home in their home office or their kitchen. And if you don't know, like you said, I mean, reach out and get some expert advice from people in the industry. Doesn't have to be a vendor. Listen to some podcasts. I'm sure there's some great stuff out there about what's prudent for your industry. But yeah, that's a great question. And like I said, that was one of the revelations that the whole COVID thing revealed to us and our customers. Wow, yeah, I guess we should be concerned about that and make sure we're doing what's needed there.
Do you have any favorite brands for the privacy screens?
I don't. I actually don't. I don't use them. I'm 6'1", so it's hard for me to get my laptop out on the airplane. But we've got some one of the sales gals that I travel with. She's a sweet petite thing, and so she works all the time on her computer on the plane, and so she's got this privacy screen. And when we're doing demos with customers, I look over. I can't see a thing on her machine. But
oh, nice. Yeah, I actually the other day I was talking with someone, and I was giving them our information, right? And their phone was just black, and I was standing right next to him, and I was like, what screen is that? And he told me. I wrote it down. I don't remember right now, but it's amazing how your eyes will just naturally go to their screen. You could, best intention, it's like a subconscious automated process that happens when someone's standing next to you. It's the same interface you're familiar with, you know everything about it, and you just watch them type in your information, maybe for accuracy. It just kind of happens. And I saw it, and I was like, these privacy screens have gotten so much better over the last decade.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen one on the phone, but that's a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're always standing next to people. And so earlier you mentioned this language, like an AI related programming language. What was it called? Ada?
Oh, Ada, yeah, yeah. It's actually Lady Ada, one of the very, very early, maybe the first programming language. I'm not sure, but it's a bit obscure at this point. But it lended itself well to building artificial intelligence engines. At least it did. Now there are way better tools out there, I'm sure now, but that was what my team was building back in the late '80s, early '90s.
So what's your perspective on AI today? What's going on there?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And let me caveat this by I am just an AI student. I am by no means an expert. It is an enormous topic. We deal with AI, and I've got some great, super smart geeks on my team that just talk about this stuff day in, day out. But so I mostly talk to our customers about AI because it's hyped out there right now. The last 10 years, there's been an explosion in the democratization of the tools that are available to build AI models and execute AI models at scale. So there's a lot of talking about it, and customers have questions. Well, how do I use this? And this gets back to kind of our core competency, which is to hear a customer's problem and then figure out a way to use a platform to solve that using technology. I think so. So I got an analogy. So many years ago, I like woodworking. I used to watch this show on TV where this guy would make beautiful furniture using 19th century tools. Right, so he'd have these axes and hand planes and hand drills and stuff that he was using, and he could crank out the most beautiful piece of furniture. And so I'd get my car, I'd drive down to Home Depot, and I'd be looking at these tools, and my gosh, they're all sciencey and engineered and cut precision cuts and stuff, and buy all these tools and take them back. I still couldn't make furniture. You really, even if you have a great tool or set of tools, you still have to have the knowledge to build something. And I think right now that's the big gap. We've got this huge hype. There's been great strides in what people are doing with artificial intelligence. Customers are salivating for this, to use this to impact their business, but they don't know how. And I think that's really going to be the next evolution of AI, is figuring out how we take business data and we really use these tools that have been developed in large industries. There's pockets of AI that are doing fantastic things right now, but I just don't think we've really got to the point where we can really effectively use them in the enterprise.
I like that analogy. That's actually the second time I've heard about that guy. I don't know his name.
Oh, really?
But that's the second reference to this guy. The other person was like a comedian or something. I heard talk about it on another show, and he was like, yeah, I just wake up, eat lunch, and watch this guy make furniture. He described it just like you did. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating. It's like, it's the craftsman, right? Anybody who is a craftsman at what they do, it's fun to watch them.
Yeah. Passionate people who are in the zone doing what there's something very attractive about that. And you sort of want to help them and help push them along and give them opportunity. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
What was your first craft that you mastered that you got really excited about?
Gosh, let's see. Probably music. So I played guitar since I was 10. Been in and out of rock bands and stuff most of my life. Not so much lately, but yeah, it's been a really a lifelong hobby for me, and that's it's been great.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, we're big music fans over here. Our producers, so Jake, like whenever he's on his call, he's got his 18 stack amps behind him, and for his I think he's more into like metal type stuff. And then our associate producer, the way we actually found him, he submitted for an internship, and he was doing these live sessions out of his house. He was recording them and doing the audio engineering on them. And he just put up the YouTube videos on his portfolio. And it was so cool because you could see someone's work and you could understand, that the quality of it. And so, yeah, big music people. I've played guitar for about 7 years now. I played saxophone a lot in like middle through high school band. So that was like my first introduction, and then a little bit of piano. But yeah, I found that the music can allow me to get into a flow state. Like I can get into a flow state programming, writing code, doing all sorts of things from writing. But for some reason, writing, I always kind of connect to work, right? Programming, I connect to work, but the music is a nice outlet. It's a way for me to get into a flow, relaxed state where it feels like the universe is just kind of going through me, right?
Yeah.
And once you have those skills, you can just kind of sit down and play.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I agree. It's a great outlet anytime. And I think it actually taught me something too. In my teens, I had different bands that I was in. Some were what we call cover bands. I just played, other people's music. Some were original bands. And I worked with some really talented musicians. And then, we would have a session, they'd go home, and I'd try some of my own stuff. And what I realized was I'm not all that creative on my own. And I need a muse. And so I need somebody to work with. But once I have somebody to work with, man, we just do some really good stuff. And so having that knowledge about myself when I, got into software, I just try not to do that stuff by myself. It's always more fun and much more productive, at least for me, to grab somebody and sit on a whiteboard and, hash through stuff. I just seem to come up with better stuff together.
Oh, always. That's the one thing that, like, there's great energy when we do Zoom calls and things like this. But the one thing I noticed is that there is a slight difference, because when you're in person, you can leave like almost tingling with the energy from the conversation, and it's here and it's present and there's great energy, but there's just this physical thing that happens when you're in the same room with somebody. And when technology can figure out how to replicate that at a distance, then that'll be a huge leap for us.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm kind of an introvert. So, some of the things that COVID has imposed upon us personally and professionally, I haven't had really a problem with, because, I'm more introverted, but man, I miss the conferences. I miss going and geeking out with 1,000 of my fellow developers, whether it's Gartner or Microsoft or Open World or whatever it is. I really miss that. So I'm looking forward to the day when we can all get back together and geek out on new technology.
Me too. And that might be, a subtle change to how we work. We might collaborate digitally and work sort of in our own environments, and then that there'll just be more conferences and maybe some even new, unique ways that you get back together, and come together and do community.
That's true.
Yeah. Everything changes. I love it. So I'm always curious to know, like, what is the best leadership advice you've ever received?
Oh gosh, let's see. Leadership advice. Well, I don't know if I have a clever statement or phrase. I've had really good bosses, and I've had bosses that weren't quite as good. I've never really had a bad boss, which maybe that's fairly amazing. But so I've just been able to learn different things from every single boss I've had. And so maybe that's it. I mean, you can learn from anybody, I think, and being open to that, and honesty, integrity, kind of the standard staples of being a good leader. But I think open door policies. One of the CEOs at one of my former companies, he had an open door policy. He actually didn't even have an office on his. Didn't have a door on his office because he believed so much in open door. I don't have like a magic silver bullet.
No. What are some of the things that you're learning right now as a leader?
Well, so I have offshore teams, and I think the cultural barrier is something that you have to understand, and it's different for each of the cultures. So now especially with remote workforces, I'm getting a lot more spam. You probably are too. Hey, we've got great teams in, pick a country in the world, right? And I'm getting more and more of those. And so I think every country that you're going to work with is going to have a different set of pros and cons, and you really have to adapt to that. So I'm working with the team in India right now. My core team is in Vietnam, and I'm really refreshing my skills, I guess, at understanding how to most effectively work with different cultures. So that's been a pretty big deal the last few months. And
then, is that like something you're sharing and discussing with your direct reports?
Yes, actually sharing with my boss and some of my peers, and yes, to an extent, my direct reports, but mostly just getting advice from other people. And I've got a lot of colleagues that have remote teams, talking to them about what works best for them, and again, if I'm finding if they don't have a team in India or they don't have a team in South America, then the advice that they give you, it might be helpful, but maybe not.
Yeah, it's interesting topic of conversation. Like when you start working with outsourced development teams, how do you transfer, or do you transfer the culture? Like how do you do culture when you haven't met, I guess, and you have different, I'm just using the word culture too much. Yeah, you have different traditions and social dynamics, right? There's a better word. And so that sounds like an area where you just have to do it and get the experience and make the mistakes.
I think so, and I think that's going to be maybe we'll see more podcasts, more people talking about how they've been successful leading teams in different areas of the world. But I think that's going to be a topic where we're going to see more activity around.
Yeah. So what's on your mind lately? Other than that, you got the outsourcing development. I saw that you guys have had like 15x revenue growth. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, we've done really good, and part of that is that transition that I mentioned, moving from selling other people's products to building our own and selling our own. So I think right now we have a very broad platform, and we've built over the last just a couple of years some really great, I'd call them kind of vertical solutions on top of that platform. One of them we've even patented, and I think that's probably going to be a focus going forward, is to work closely with customers to see if there are opportunities for us to build out solutions that we can then replicate to other customers, and based on our core competency, our core platform. So we're pretty excited about it, and we've got several things in the works right now that are they're pretty cool.
Have you done any divestitures, spin-outs, or acquisitions there?
No, not yet. But absolutely. Well, I take that back. We did an IP acquisition, a small one, but not like a company acquisition. But absolutely, I've been through several acquisitions. And I think that's a great way to bring on a whole new set of talent, whole new set of perspectives, customers, and yeah, that's a good way to do it if you can.
Yeah, I saw that you had a little bit of experience with the M&A at Oracle, like some of the due diligence M&A process at Oracle.
Yeah. So we brought on, we were acquired, and then immediately they came to us and they said, okay, hypothetically speaking, if you could buy another software company that would complement what you just brought to Oracle, what would that be? So yeah, we did a number of acquisitions the first couple of years that we were there. I kind of enjoyed some of that, and so was put on a couple of other acquisitions as a due diligence lead, just taking a look at the technology they were thinking about buying and making sure it would fit and align with what Oracle wanted to do.
What's the most important part that you've learned of the M&A process that you've been a part of?
Oh, well, so there are scans that that we would run against the prospective company's software. And it was always surprising what those scans would reveal. And so those things would identify, open source libraries, code snippets, other commercial products, things like that. And we would very often find things that I honestly believe the company didn't even know they had. And, you've been in development, right? And it's what happens, you need to do something, you run out, you do a quick search. Oh, I found this really cool little library on GitHub, oh, it's MIT. That's great. I'll grab it and I'll dump it in and, boom, it's in the build. Without really thinking about, oh, I guess we probably should document that. And then, that needs to be disclosed, and they're going to find that, when they do a code scan. And so that was really an interesting part of it. And we spent the majority of our time, I think, in due diligence talking about what we found in the scans, what they had in their software that they may or may not have known about, and whether or not, components need to be remediated because of, a copy left or licensing that, Oracle didn't really care for.
Excellent. This is great, man. I've got like one more question to wrap up here. I'm curious, what's the stated like long-term mission at ImageSource?
Well, I think our goal is to service our customers the best we can. Everybody says, oh, we've got great service. And when I came on board at ImageSource, I asked similar questions during the interview process. I said, well, what do you guys think your strength is? Is it your technology, your people, whatever? And they said, we really think it's our customer service. And okay, yeah. So I get on board, and they weren't kidding. From the top down, ImageSource, I believe, puts more effort, more skin in the game when it comes to customer success. We've been upside down on a couple deals, and, our CEO and our CIO, they're just like, we need to make it happen. We need to make this customer successful, and this is going to hurt, but it needs to be done. And so I think that's, and to me, that's very important to have that kind of approach to business. So whatever we do technology-wise, that's fine. I think just, if we can do it and service our customers, and we've got fantastic customer satisfaction ratings, that's the kind of place I want to work.
Yeah, me too. You want to work with people that have similar values and want to come through for the customer and deliver high quality.
Absolutely.
I love it. Randy, we did it, my friend. We made a podcast. How do you feel?
It was great. Thank you so much. To be honest, I'm more of a audible book person.
Yeah.
I travel to Seattle a lot, or I used to. So I do a business book every trip. And so I do a book a month or more. And I don't do a lot of podcasts. And so when this came up, and I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Yeah, let's do that. And then I go out and I look, and I'm like, oh my goodness, you had the CTO of Google like a couple of weeks ago, Marcus East. And it's
he's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, he's awesome. Brilliant guy. And just so likable, right? I mean, I'd love to just sit down and pick his brain for an hour, but honestly, I was intimidated, because I've had some kind of interesting jobs, but man, you've had some really great people, and your shows are fantastic, and they're really, really engaging. I really like them. So,
I appreciate
you got another big fan, man.
Thank you. Yeah. I just try to we just try to focus. It's just two people, like the conversations I would be having at lunch. And it's hard too when it gets bigger, because then, some people actually won't come on because they're nervous. And I'm like, don't think about it. It's going to be you and me. We're just going to hang out. We're just going to talk for a little bit, and we're going to see where it goes. And there's nothing too rigid. And the goal is we're coming from a genuine place, because we want to help, the next generation of these technology leaders who are listening to get them the best habits that they can grow in their careers and prosper and do well. And then they can pay it forward to the next generation. All we're just doing is just talking about our experience and hanging out.
Right. It's so great and such good value. I mean, I've listened to about half a dozen of your podcasts now, and I'm going to keep listening. They're really, really good. Easy to listen to too.
Awesome. Thanks, Randy. We'll talk soon.
Okay, Joel. Thank you. Bye-bye now.